please respond to the shooting, 14300 East Alameda Avenue.
The World Trade Center, tower number 1 is on fire. The whole outside of the building was just a huge explosion.
You're listening to Be the Hero podcast, brought to you by Heroes Behind the Line, where we break the stigma of silence around PTSD and mental health. Are you a first responder in need or just want to talk? Send us a message on Facebook, Heroes Behind the Line, or Be the Hero podcast, and welcome to the show.
Good evening, Deputy Director Tommy Byers here. I am with Mr. Shawn Wilson. He is a well-versed guest. We're excited to have him on the podcast. Mr. Shawn, why don't you go ahead and tell us about yourself?
Thanks, I appreciate it. My name is Shawn Wilson. I'm retired from law enforcement. I'm also retired military. Spent my full military career as infantry, 8 years active duty, 13 plus years in the National Guard here in Arkansas. I'm retired from Washington County Sheriff's Office. I retired early, 14 years. And now I just, I talk about mental health and try to help first responders break that stigma within mental health.
Awesome. So you spent quite a little bit of time in the military.
Mm-hmm.
So you were Army active duty to begin your...
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And then when you transitioned over into National Guard, is that when you started your law enforcement career? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And it was with Washington County. Were you just a patrol deputy or?
So obviously, with most county, you have to start off in the jail.
Absolutely.
For a period of time. So I did my 6 months in the jail. Then I went directly from there, actually 6 month, one day, went directly into patrol, and then spent the rest of my 13 years. I retired early. So spent 13 years on patrol.
Awesome.
Within 950 square miles of Arkansas.
And that's a good career there. Definitely put in some work. We talk about the different things that first responders see, and we work through those mental problems that may come up while in that career. Was there anything that just stood out to you that you would pass on to the future generations on how to help themselves?
I think one of the biggest things is really that stigma that it's not okay to be not okay.
Okay.
I grew up with that in the active duty side, even though everybody wanted to talk about, mental health is very important. Trauma, dealing with your traumas is very important. We have help out there, but it was very frowned upon in the military and even in the National Guard side. Even today, it's still frowned upon. They say they want to help. They say they want to do
Absolutely.
things, but it's all the right things. But when you do ask for help, it was kind of shunned on, and you're kind of like used kids' gloves on you.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, in the beginning of my law enforcement career, it was still that way. And it is still that way, for the most part, especially with the older generation that are in administrative positions or have moved up the ranks or are still that shift sergeant.
Yeah.
But
the ones that are always like, this is always how we do
this is what you chose.
Yeah.
I was infantry, this is what you chose. You kick in doors and, close with and destroy the enemy. That's the job. That's what you pick. You just deal with it. Have rhino skin. I hate that. I hate that saying. You got to have rhino skin. So that is really something that has been needing to change, and I'm starting to see, especially with the younger generation, they seem to be more willing to talk about their issues or talk about things that affect them. We go with seeing traumatic instances of whether it's an accident, a car wreck, or a child death, or sexual assault, or something like that, or even some things overseas. When I was overseas, when I was in Iraq, my first tour, I was afraid every day. I didn't tell anybody that, but I was scared. I didn't know if that was my last day.
Absolutely.
And some of the things you see and some of the things you are unfortunately you have to do, you're put in a position to do, or you lose. In my case, I lost one of my best friends. He was blown up by an IED, and got to watch him. I know he's dead, but he was aspirating in 5 pieces, and so those things stick with you.
Absolutely.
But you don't have anybody to talk to about it.
Yeah.
And they say, well, you have the chaplain to see. Well, you know what? Nobody really wants to go, because if you go, then you're perceived as weak.
Absolutely.
And whether militarily or in law enforcement or the first responder world as a whole, that is still the case.
Absolutely.
Now, there are some departments out there that I've worked with and I've talked to that are making those changes and are being proactive instead of reactive.
It seems like they're getting ahead of the curve a little bit.
Exactly, which is really good, especially for Arkansas. I've noticed, we're actually ahead of the curve over some states that I've been to. I've been to some states that are still stuck in the Stone Age, that you don't deal with it. And then when one of their officers or their first responders commit suicide, then they're like, well, why did you do that? You could have come talk to us. Well, hey man, you could have went and talked to him. And I saw that as well. Nobody came and talked to me. I was suffering. So
it's a common problem that we run into across the entire, region of first responders is, everybody sees their shift partner or their beat partner or whoever it is struggling, but nobody has the gumption to speak up and say, hey, I see that you're struggling. How can I help you? It's just kind of a let it run its course,
Exactly.
It's an unfortunate thing.
Exactly. And, I didn't want to believe it. Like, I was obviously self-medicating since 2005.
Yeah.
That's a typical self-destructive behavior that, people we have, whether in the military or the first responder world as a whole. But my wife, I had a friend of ours that was a nurse at the VA in Fayetteville, and she would bring my wife these PTSD questionnaires, and my wife would start checking off pretty much all the boxes, and she would hand them to me, and I still was like, no, that's for weak people, that's a cop out,
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I started going through my issues and realizing I came to a turning point in my life to where I never thought I would commit suicide. And because it went against my religion, it was a coward's way out. Yeah. That's the way I looked at it. And then I found myself sitting on a county road out in Evansville, southeast portion of Washington County. And I was sitting there and I was thinking about it. Next thing you know, I had my service weapon in my hand. And I was thinking the whole process of every suicide that I've worked. And I was thinking about, okay, well, my wife was a dispatcher at the time. She was the lead dispatcher, and she was actually on County A. And I was thinking about the thing, okay, I do it. What's going to happen? Well, she's going to give me a 1050 check. I'm not going to respond. So she's going to give me another 1050 check. I'm not going to respond. Then she's going to direct the net. Then she's going to send the closest units, which would have been Lincoln PD. And Lincoln would have shown up and found me dead. Then they would have called her or told her over the radio, over code. And I'm thinking about, oh my God, what's that going to do to my wife? And then my supervisor is going to show up. Then state police is going to come work it because we're not going to work it.
Yeah.
And then I thought about that whole process. And that, to be honest, was what kept me from not doing it.
Yeah.
Because I knew what it would do to her.
Yeah.
And that's coming from someone that I was like, I don't believe in it.
Yeah.
That's a coward's way out.
Yeah.
But then next it was, oh my gosh, it was almost an option.
Yeah.
It was almost an option. And at that point I realized, hey, you know what? I really need to talk to somebody. I really need some help. And I was a peer support member at the time too. And I knew everything to say to other people, but I didn't follow it.
And that's a big stigma that comes along with first responders as well as, we try to shoulder the load of everybody else's problems, but we're not in tune with ourselves to say, hey, I need help. And, on top of that, the stigma of, I don't want to appear weak. How do I ask for help when I'm trying to be the hero for somebody else?
Exactly. Because we are expected to be all that is, that wearing that cape. We have to fulfill that perception that society views us. I think it's I think it's harder for women first responders, female first responders, because not only do they have to compete in what has always been considered a male-dominant field,
Absolutely,
but they also have to justify not just to themselves, but to everybody that works with them that they deserve to be in that position and they deserve to be doing that job. So they have that added stress as well.
They they have to be perceived as the baddest of the bad
Exactly.
in order to compete in that field.
Exactly.
And it's an unfortunate downfall to that side of, being in the field.
It is 100%. I will say that we have come a long way with recognizing and different avenues of approach to dealing with trauma or PTSD. I heard a question that was given out: is PTSD treatable? Can you come back from it? Yes, you can, and I think we're doing a lot better with getting when officers are involved or first responders are involved in critical incidents. That we do that critical incident debrief. And Absolutely. I know that's something that you guys do. And I love your organization, by the way. So going out and doing those critical incident debriefs immediately is a fantastic thing. I know the state, Atlas, they have a wellness team that goes out as well. Mm-hmm. And they help smaller departments that don't have those fundings or those wellness programs. And that is important because I remember times that, okay, they take your gun and they do the investigation, they put you on admin leave, and that's about it. And then you don't get anything else.
Yeah, it's a very scary process, for the ones that aren't in law enforcement or anything like that. You subsequently pull the trigger because of the suspect's actions, and then all of a sudden it's your gun's taken away, your body camera's taken away, you're isolated in a car until the criminal investigation can get there. You read Miranda, which it's weird for us being on that end because we're the ones always reading Miranda. Yeah. You read Garrity for your interview with your IA or your professional standards unit. And then you're still just in this little bubble and isolated in your own world. And you're still going through the trauma of what you've just gone through and what has just occurred.
Absolutely.
So it's a little bit of it's an issue that needs to be addressed.
It does. First of all, don't take away something that, if you're going to take that officer's weapon, even though everybody knows it's a good shoot, mm-hmm. right? Everybody in the department, they know it's a good shoot.
Yeah, it's still protocol.
It's still protocol. Then take it. Give them a replacement weapon. Yeah. You're basically taking something away from them. This is my view, at least. Yeah. You're taking that something that he's carried on his hip forever mm-hmm. as a means to defend himself. And now in his mind, he's now become defensive.
Absolutely.
Or she has become defensive.
Absolutely.
And which I think is a terrible thing. I think another thing I'd like to get into is one thing my department was really open to, I went for treatment. So I went to a place called Shatterproof, which is a first responder program for first responders only. And majority of the clinicians are first responders and former first responders. So they understood our type of trauma. I went there twice because the first time I lied to myself, I obviously had self-destructive behaviors of self-medicating. Yeah. And, but I didn't want to admit that. I just want to admit I have overseas trauma. So I went for 31 days, came back, got into the VA IOP program. I got kicked out immediately after 3 weeks. So I went back to Shatterproof for 62 days and admitted that I had, a self-medicating problem. Yep. But one thing my department did is, which I love, is I ended up getting on ketamine.
Okay.
So psychoactive therapy was definitely a game changer for me as a mood stabilizer. And also helped me out with my drug-resistant depression. My department knew that I was doing ketamine intravenously, and they didn't have an issue with it. Yeah. Obviously, I had to be sober.
You can't come on shift.
Exactly. I always made sure it was 12 hours, or I'd do it on my days off. That's when I'd schedule it, and I'd at least have 12 to 24 hours before I'm going on shift. Yeah. But they were cool with that. They were like, "Hey, as long as we understand this is why you have it, and this is medically needed, we support it." So, from when I first started at county to when I decided that I needed help, and then the medication, and then the road map that was given me to recovery, their stance had changed 180 degrees, which was amazing.
Yeah. So essentially, you were what you would call like a trailblazer in that sense when it came to.
Definitely. I was the first one in my department to go.
Yeah.
I had a friend of mine that worked for a municipality
Uh-huh.
that's within Washington County. Unfortunately, he went to the program. He told me about the program. I passed it on to our peer team. I thought I checked into it. I was like, wow, that sounds like a great program.
Yeah.
And then, unfortunately, he lost his job, his marriage, but it ultimately helped him save his own life, which is important. And that's what it did for me. But I was the first person to go from my department. So it was kind of like trying to figure and feel it out. And sorry, I got a little distracted there.
No, I understand all these people walking around.
Yeah. So it just really became, I was the test baby, I guess you can say, for our department.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, we started just, it became, that's the standard now, and they know how to deal with it. We know how to deal with the FMLA, the catastrophic leave, and we set the standard for as an option for our department, for any member within that department. And I still say our department. Yeah, I'm retired from there, but that's still my home. Yeah. It's still, I'm still friends with them.
It's where you were made.
Exactly. Yeah. I wasn't, I didn't go to any other department as a police officer. So that was my law enforcement career, was there. Yeah. And I still, that's my alma mater. So, I still hold to it.
So to circle back around, you said that a question that you get a lot is do you recover from PTSD? Mm-hmm. And it's apparent that it is, feasible to be done. So
yes.
What was your steps on how to recover from PTSD?
So let's for me, there has to be post-traumatic growth is a very big portion of it. But first step is recognizing that you do have, unfortunately, PTSD has been thrown around so much, just like triggers and all these other buzzwords, gaslighting, all that other stuff. It seems like commonplace. Everybody's got PTSD for some reason, and there's different flavors of PTSD. But for that trauma that had been with me for so long, I first had to recognize it.
Yeah.
I had to accept it.
Mm-hmm.
I had to accept that the things that I had issues with that I had done overseas, they were not my fault.
Yeah.
Right.
Just doing a job.
I was doing my job. Unfortunately, the people that put me into those situations, and I'm talking about not my fellow soldiers or my chain of command, but those individuals that unfortunately, we had to engage.
Yeah.
They put me into that position, and I had to do what I had to do. At the end of the day, just like all first responders, your first priority is to come home.
Absolutely.
Come back home. And, it's unfortunate in 2023, we lost, I think 183 or 185 law enforcement officers.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact number, but it's crazy. It's high.
It is. And they say something like 30% of first responders commit suicide. And out of that, 50 some odd percent are law enforcement officers, which is a high number compared to the civilian world. Yeah. But, and I may be a little off on those numbers, but so when we talk about PTSD, I still have my traumas. Mm-hmm. I still suffer from my nightmares. I still take, the VA's got me on a bag of Skittles, of course. I still take my medication to be able to sleep and to not wake up in panic attacks. Yeah. But I think the first and foremost, the biggest thing you have to do is recognize the fact that you have PTSD.
Absolutely.
Recognize that you do have a problem, you do have trauma, and that you do need to do something about it. And over time, with therapy, sometimes with medication, you can get through PTSD. You can get through your traumas. You can work through a lot of things. I like him, but why is he behind me?
Yeah, he's a character.
Yeah, yeah. Did you want to come do this? Anyway, so learning about recognizing it at first, and then actually going to therapy. I see my therapist twice a week. We don't always talk about my traumas. Sometimes just sitting with my therapist and talking to her about my day is actually very beneficial.
Yeah,
and talking to other people with the same kind of traumas. But I think what a lot of people make a mistake is they they try to compare traumas well, my trauma is more important, or his trauma is more important than my trauma.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's not, because my trauma only affects me, right, and my family, but me primarily. So I apologize.
No, you're fine. You're fine. So, as you know, most first responders are, ex-military.
Yes.
So talk to us a little bit about transitioning from, being on a deployment and being able to come home and knowing that you're out of danger to, coming back and working in the first responder realm where you're constantly worried about it. What was the different stresses like?
So when I first came back, I wasn't out of danger in my mind, right? Obviously, you don't go from, I was single. I didn't come home to a wife, or a family. But I still drove in the center lane if possible. If a car came out quickly from a side road, I swerved. I obviously had those reactions that I had from overseas. So it took a while for my mind to get out of the fight or flight mentality or the hypervigilance. And then when I transferred into law enforcement, I realized you're on the front lines every day. And so now, instead of having that year break or 18-month break between deployments, I was married, and I kissed my wife goodbye for the last time every morning, knowing that, hey, this could be it. Because I don't know what the day holds. And as a patrol officer, obviously you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what call you're going to go to. You don't know what's going to happen on a traffic stop. You don't know what's going to happen from one moment to the next. I can get in a car accident. I could die. But you are on the front lines every single day. And having that understanding, really, I guess, caused some issues. With my state of mind, I guess you can say. It continued with the hypervigilance. It didn't really, I was unable to relax. And unfortunately, I was also unable to process the day's events. Because I started self-medicating even more. And all those files that I had from the day, I didn't put them in the filing cabinet. I just started drinking. And which obviously took away a portion of my sleep that allows me to process the day's events. So it just, there's a saying that I believe the world's a dangerous place, but the world is a dangerous place not because of those that do evil, but because of those that stand by and do nothing. And so that thought is like, I'm always on alert. I'm always looking for that. I've got to run into that building, whether I'm on duty or not. And our job is to run towards the bullets, not away from it. So it was a really weird transition. I felt like, well, I'm infantry every day now again. I'm deployed all the
100%
time. 100% of the time. Except I get to see my wife. Anyway,
a little bit different. It's something that everybody struggles with. It's easy to fall into that self-medication pattern.
Oh, 100%.
Instead of taking the necessary steps to understand, hey, I've got a problem. Let me speak to a mental health professional about how to digest this. It's easier for us to go and just pick up a bottle of Jack, or to go and talk to my doctor. Hey, I'm not sleeping well. Can you prescribe me something? And just fall into that rigmarole of, I need to take this in order to feel better. But all you're doing is suppressing it instead of dealing with it.
Exactly. Self-medication is a problem within the first responder world. Infidelity is a huge problem within the first responder world. Binge shopping, all these other self-destructive behaviors, because they make us feel better about ourselves. For
gives you a little bit of a dopamine release.
Ooh, this girl's interested in me, even though I'm married. It gets that dopamine release, like you said. I've bought stuff that to this day I still haven't touched. My wife was like, "Why'd you buy that?" And I was like,
because it looked cool.
It made me feel good, and I had been drinking, and I felt like shopping and buying myself something. And she's like, well, you better sell it or start using it. So, but yeah, I understand.
So if there was one thing that you in your shoes right now could tell your younger self, what would that be?
First of all, I would not tell myself not to serve, because I think that was a very important part of my life, and my growth as a man. I was a very immature 20-year-old. But one thing that I would tell myself is that it's okay not to be okay.
Absolutely.
And that don't wait for your loved one or family members to tell you that you have a problem. Don't wait till you're crying in a closet in the middle of your sleep, and then your wife's pulling on you, trying to wake you up. Don't wait till you're slamming your head against the baseboard of your bed, because saying you're going to lose your crap, you're going to lose your crap. And then your wife is about to walk out the door. Don't wait.
Yeah.
If you have a traumatic incident, if you have something that causes you stress, seeing a child death, and you have a child at that same age at home, and you know that it's bothering you, go talk to somebody. If you have an OIS, don't pretend it's okay. You may feel all right now, but go talk to somebody about it immediately. Don't wait, because the sooner you deal with it, the better chance that you have to have some resolution.
Absolutely.
And to work through it a lot. Yeah. It takes a lot longer for those of us that wait over a decade to deal with our problems. Yeah. Then you realize, oh, I also have mommy issues. But anyway,
absolutely.
So, yeah, it's just deal with it now. That's what I would tell myself. Hey, you're going to have some issues in life.
Yeah.
Talk to somebody immediately. Even if you don't have a therapist, get a therapist now, because it's always good to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah,
yep.
Definitely.
All right. Well, we thank y'all for joining us on the Be the Hero podcast. Mr. Shawn, we appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for sharing all of your experiences with us. Yeah. Just want to remind our viewers, if you need anything, please feel free to reach out and contact us. We're here 24/7, 365 days a year. And don't forget to be the hero.
We would like to thank our guests for being with us today, and a special shout out to all the first responders who rise to the challenges of the job every day. You are our heroes. Please like, follow, and subscribe to our Facebook pages, Heroes Behind the Line and Be the Hero Podcast. If you have an interesting story and would like to be a guest on the show, please reach out to us on Facebook. As always, be the hero and stay safe out there. Thank you.